Underlying love, beneath the surface it lies, in the whispers of secrets and unspoken ties, caught between the heart's gentle tug and the dance of romance, in the arms of love.
You are listening to Bradley Barkhurst's Underlying Love, a Worthington, Ohio mystery. Chapter 4, Part 1, Thunder Rumbles. Questions Loom. The autumn sun was lowering in the sky as Elizabeth and her mother exited the grand doors of the Netherland Plaza. Arm in arm, they strolled to the line of waiting taxis and hailed one to take them back to Price Hill. As the cab pulled away from the curb, the driver asked,
"Where to, ladies?"
"Oh, we're heading to Price Hill, please,"
Elizabeth's mother responded. As they drove, Elizabeth gazed out the window deep in thought. They passed an Empress chili shop, its neon sign just flickering on in the dusk. She wondered if Samuel had tried Cincinnati's famous chili and imagined bringing him here, seeing his face light up after the first mouth-watering bite. Elizabeth scolded herself internally. She shouldn't be having such fanciful thoughts about Samuel. Not when she had pledged herself to George back home. But still, she couldn't help but imagine Samuel's reaction if he saw her in this elegant new dress, wearing Aunt Gracie's necklace. Surely, he would be mesmerized. The cab began steadily climbing the steep streets that gave Price Hill its name. Elizabeth reminded herself that she and Samuel were long ago and far away now. She was an engaged woman. Still, seeing him again, if only for a moment, had reawakened dormant feelings and hopes inside her. Up the hill they continued as Elizabeth gazed out at the houses flickering past, as unsure about her future as the dusky sunset fading into nightfall around them. The cab wound its way up the steep, curving streets that led to Price Hill. Elizabeth gripped the door handle as they swung around tight bends, the buildings and sidewalks tilting at gravity-defying angles. It felt strangely reminiscent of her shifting perspectives and tilting emotions over the past day. First came the surprise encounter with Samuel, rattling the foundations of her heart. Then, joyful moments laughing with family before the sobering visit with ailing Aunt Gracie. The soaring highs and plummeting lows had left Elizabeth feeling dizzy and unsettled. Like this cab careening around hazardous hills and valleys, life had thrown her on a roller coaster ride when all she expected was a straightforward journey. As the streets leveled out atop Price Hill, Elizabeth glanced at her mother. She took comfort in knowing that despite life's twists and turns, she could rely on the unwavering support of family. With their steadying presence, she could regain balance while navigating her way forward, wherever the road may lead next. The cab rolled to a stop in front of Aunt Gracie and Uncle Herbert's cozy home. Elizabeth noticed right away that the front porch light was off, unusual on a cool autumn evening. She and her mother made their way up the walk arm in arm. Before they could even knock, the door swung open, revealing a grim-faced Uncle Herbert. His eyes were red-rimmed and missing their habitual twinkle.
"Ladies, I'm afraid Gracie passed away this afternoon,"
he said heavily. Elizabeth and her mother both gasped, fresh tears springing to their eyes as they embraced Uncle Herbert.
"Oh, Herbert, I'm so sorry,"
Elizabeth's mother choked out.
"How are you holding up?"
He shook his head sadly.
"It's a terrible blow, but she went peacefully with me there." and I know it would have brought her great happiness to know you two were enjoying a beautiful day together.
That's exactly what we were talking about at dinner.
Elizabeth said.
All our favorite memories of Gracie. She was there with us in spirit.
Uncle Herbert managed a faint smile at that.
Good, I'm glad to hear it. Now come inside, I could use the company tonight.
The three crossed the threshold together, united in their grief, but drawing strength from shared love and loss. After sitting up late into the night, reminiscing with Uncle Herbert, he finally said,
Ladies, it's getting late. We should all try to get some rest.
Elizabeth hugged her uncle goodnight and retired to the guest bedroom. As she lay in bed, thoughts of Aunt Gracie flooded her mind. Memories of baking cookies, exchanging secrets, laughing until their sides ached. Silent tears fell, remembering her dear aunt's vibrant spirit. Eventually, Gracie faded from her mind, replaced by Samuel's face. Elizabeth thought back on all the times Samuel had comforted her through life's difficulties with his easy laugh and strong embrace. In contrast, while steady and reliable, George had never been one for heartfelt words or gestures. She knew he would offer practical support if she confided her grief. But it wouldn't be the same as Samuel wrapping her in his arms, soothing her with whispers that everything would be okay. Exhausted by the emotional day, Elizabeth finally drifted off to sleep. She dreamt she was walking hand in hand with Samuel down a sunlit road, weightless and unburdened. Elizabeth was startled awake by a knock at her door.
Elizabeth, it's time to get up.
Came her mother's muffled voice.
We're going to church while your uncle makes arrangements at the funeral home.
Still bleary, Elizabeth blinked open her eyes and stared up at the ceiling. The grief of yesterday came flooding back. She slowly dressed in a simple black dress, pinning on the hat she had bought with her mother. When she emerged, Uncle Herbert was waiting by the front door, looking weary but composed.
The cab will be here any minute to take you ladies to St. Francis Xavier,
he informed them. Turning to Elizabeth, he added,
I likely won't see you again before your trip home. Travel safely and have a good week teaching.
Are you sure I shouldn't stay and help?
Elizabeth asked. But Uncle Herbert patted her hand.
Your mother will be here. Get back to your students.
He pulled an envelope from his pocket with a grin.
Here is your ticket home,
he said, pressing it into her hand. Elizabeth looked down in surprise.
A train ticket?
Yes, I wanted you to travel back in style.
He said with a gentle smile.
Now get going and give those kids an extra hug from Uncle Herbert.
Elizabeth embraced him tightly, not knowing when they would meet again. As the cab pulled up, she dabbed her eyes and followed her mother down the walk. The taxi carried Elizabeth and her mother down the winding hills back into downtown Cincinnati. As they drove, her mother pointed out landmarks to distract Elizabeth from her grief.
There's St. Francis Xavier Church up ahead. Did you know it was dedicated back in 1826?
She commented. Elizabeth nodded, gazing up at the imposing Gothic revival structure standing tall above the neighborhood. She appreciated her mother's efforts to redirect her thoughts. The taxi swerved around a streetcar, jolting Elizabeth from her reverie. She glanced at her mother, who gave her a brave smile, though her eyes were misty. They pulled up to the church as the bells rang out for 9 o'clock Mass. Elizabeth helped her mother from the cab, and they joined the stream of churchgoers. The cavernous interior enveloped them in candlelight and hushed voices. As Elizabeth slid into the polished wooden pew, with her necklace dangling in front of her, The bells fell silent. There was only the faint whisper of prayers. Elizabeth bowed her head, letting the solemn beauty of the church begin to heal her sorrow. She felt her mother's hand grasp hers, a touching link amidst devastating loss. The priest's homily was even about loss, as if he knew about the passing.
My brothers and sisters, grief can shroud our hearts like the blackest night. But even when loss dims our days, there are points of light, if only we open our eyes. The love of family, the compassion of friends, the promise of reuniting someday in our eternal home.
Elizabeth was moved by his words of solace and hope. She whispered a prayer for her Aunt Gracie, as well as all those carrying sorrow today. After Mass, she and her mother strolled arm in arm down the church steps to browse the nearby Findlay market, leaves crunching under their feet. They chatted about childhood memories of Gracie and their fondest recollections from happier days. Though tinged with sadness, sharing these stories brought comfort and even occasional laughter. Stepping into Findlay Market, Elizabeth and her mother were immersed in a sensory feast for the eyes, nose, and taste buds. The bustling indoor market had been a Cincinnati institution since 1855. They wandered past brightly painted stalls, overflowing with plump produce, bushels of apples, mounds of oranges, woven baskets spilling over with glossy eggplants and peppers. The smell of fresh flowers mingled with the smoky aroma of cured meats and pungent cheeses. For lunch, they shared a decadent charcuterie board from one of the cheerfully decorated delis. As they nibbled on succulent cured meats, creamy cheese, olives, and crackers, their conversation turned to reminiscing about trips to Findlay with Aunt Gracie.
Oh, how she loved perusing those flower stalls.
Elizabeth's mother said with a wistful smile.
Remember how she'd pick out the most exotic bouquets?
Elizabeth grinned.
And she'd always sneak some fresh pastry for us from the bakery, even though we'd just had a big lunch.
The sweet memories were bittersweet, but brought comfort nonetheless. Bellies full and spirits lifted, the two women strolled the vibrant market, admiring the bounty of sights and smells, keeping Gracie's vivacious spirit alive in their hearts. After their leisurely lunch, Elizabeth and her mother exited Findlay Market and managed to hail a passing cab. As they climbed inside, her mother turned to her and said,
I have a little surprise for you, darling.
She instructed the driver to take them to Alt Park. Elizabeth gazed out the window as the cab wound its way up, passing the Mount Lookout Observatory. They drove through a resplendent tunnel of autumn leaves in vibrant hues of crimson, gold, and amber. When they arrived at the park's overlook, Elizabeth gasped. Spread out before them was an incredible panorama of forests and valleys glowing in the afternoon sunlight. It truly was the crowning jewel of the Queen City.
Oh, Mother, it's breathtaking up here.
Elizabeth sighed, squeezing her mother's hand. For a moment, sadness and troubles were blown away by the crisp breeze. There was only sunlit beauty and comforting companionship. Her mother wrapped an arm around her shoulders.
I hoped you'd like it.
Elizabeth leaned into her mother's embrace, cherishing the memory she had gifted. As the peaceful view stretched before them, she felt Aunt Gracie's spirit at her shoulder, approving.
Thank you for listening to Underlying Love, a Worthington, Ohio mystery. Now that Aunt Gracie has passed away, how will Elizabeth and her mother cope with the death? Will Samuel still be in Worthington when Elizabeth returns? And will Elizabeth's neighbor, Betty Wimsfeld, find her missing Jell-O recipe? Find all this and more in the continuing episodes. Next up, Part 2 of Chapter 4, Thunder rumbles, questions loom.